Chapter 1.
I pulled the curtains open and looked down at the street. It was hot, too hot for London in the middle of July, and I was angry. I closed the curtains and returned to my mother's room. She lay in bed, and I could hear her breathing. She looked so thin, and I sat next to her and held her hand. "I'm not going," I said. "You can't send me away." I looked at my mother, and her face was white like the sheets and pillowcases.
"It's only for a month, until I feel a little better, my darling,"
she said.
"Then you can come home."
Dr. Barnes stood on the other side of the bed.
"Has Megan got any friends?"
he asked Mrs. Brown, our home help. Mrs. Brown shook her head.
"Megan doesn't have any friends,"
I heard her whisper.
"She's a strange child."
Friends? Of course I didn't have any friends. We moved to this part of London 6 months ago, and my new school was horrible. Mother didn't know. I didn't tell her about the bullies and the nasty text messages. Dr. Barnes put his glasses on. I could see that he didn't know what to do. We needed a miracle.
"Your mother is very unwell, Megan,"
he said.
"She needs to rest, and you can't stay here for the summer holidays."
"I don't want to leave you, Mum. You want to send me to the Highlands of Scotland to stay with Uncle Fraser, but I hate the countryside." I stood up and looked at the doctor. "I'm not going, and you can't make me go." But Dr. Barnes could make me go. And he did. I watched the countryside change through the window of the train as we travelled into Scotland. I could see fields, dry stone walls, and lots of sheep. But where were the people? Mrs. Wallace, a friend of Dr. Barnes, was with me. She wanted to chat, but I didn't.
"The Isle of Skye is beautiful. The air is so fresh,"
she said. "I hate fresh air. I like the air in London," I said. Mrs. Wallace sighed and opened her book. We changed trains, and the next one was very old. A man sat singing quietly in the corner. He had a long white beard. In another corner there was a woman with a basket of chickens. I looked at these people. I came from a different world. In my world there were shops, people, and traffic. We caught the ferry at Mallaig. The wind blew my long dark hair, and my pale blue eyes searched the island for people. But it looked so quiet.
"Cloud Island,"
said Mrs. Wallace, giving me a sweet.
"In the Old Norse language, ski means cloud, and I means island. It's often misty here."
I didn't answer. I could only think that I wanted to go home. We got off the ferry at Armadale, and I stood by the sea and waited for my uncle. I felt wrong in my London clothes. I took my mobile phone out of my pocket and called home. Mrs. Brown answered, but Mum was asleep.
"Your uncle's here,"
said Mrs. Wallace. I said goodbye.
"Megan!"
A strong voice called. He was a tall man with wavy hair and a big smile.
I'm over here.
He disappeared behind some trees. Pulling my suitcase, I followed. But my uncle didn't have a car. He was standing next to a beige-coloured pony, and he put my suitcase into a little red trap.
Chapter 2.
The journey was uncomfortable in the pony and trap as we trotted along the narrow roads, but it was fun too. I could see the bay, the seaweed and the rocks, and smell the salty sea. Seagulls flew overhead. I looked at my uncle. He had my mother's smile, but they were very different. He saw me looking at him.
So, this is your first visit to Skye, Megan. I'm so pleased you're here.
He said. I want to bring Mum next time when she's better, I said. His eyes looked sad.
I want her to come here too.
And then he took a deep breath, and there was silence. We trotted on through a forest, and then we stopped at a place where the view of the mountains was spectacular.
The Coolin Range.
Said Uncle Fraser.
This is the best place to see the mountains.
I got out of the trap and looked around. It was a magical place. There was a ruined castle and below a sandy beach. The waves crashed, and I thought I saw a silvery white horse playing in the water. It ran and jumped, and I am sure that I heard it call me. Uncle Fraser! I shouted. There's a white horse! He didn't hear me, and when I turned, the silvery white horse was not there. We got into the trap. I saw a silvery white horse down by the sea, I said. Uncle Fraser stopped and looked at me with surprise.
Did you?
But then he said no more. My mobile phone beeped. You have one new message, it said. I pressed read. Have a sad holiday. I pressed eliminate. It was from one of the horrible girls at school. I switched my phone off. I needed to forget about them. The roads were very narrow now.
We're nearly home,
said my uncle. I stared at him. We couldn't be nearly home. We were in the countryside. I could see some small houses, lots of animals and grass, but there was no town. Uncle Fraser turned right into a small track.
Home, Darwin.
Uncle Fraser said to the pony. Darwin walked slowly because there were chickens running in front of him. At the end of the track, there was a little white house with a front garden full of flowers. In one field, I could see 4 cows waiting patiently by the gate, and in another, there were some goats and a donkey.
We're home,
said Uncle Fraser.
Welcome to White Heather Cottage.
Chapter 3.
I was shocked. Uncle Fraser lived in a thatched white croft near the sea and surrounded by grass. White Heather Cottage had a tiny wooden front door, and Uncle Fraser had to bend his head to go in and out. There were 3 rooms downstairs. Inside the croft it was cosy and warm. The kitchen was at the far end, and there was a table near the window. A small fire burned with cooking pans hanging above it. I looked out at the bright orange sky.
We have great sunsets here,
said Uncle Fraser. He showed me his study. He was a writer, and he wrote historical novels. There were pens and paper all over his desk and books everywhere.
Crofts don't usually have an upstairs, but this one does,
he said. He took me upstairs to show me my room. It was lovely. There was a wooden bed and a red rug on the floor. Next to the bed there was a chest, which looked like a pirate's treasure chest. There was a small desk near the window and a vase of fresh white heather. There were pictures of animals and wildflowers hanging on the walls. Uncle Fraser's bedroom was at the end of the corridor, and there was a small bathroom with a bathtub and a pile of soft white towels. "It's very pretty," I said to Uncle Fraser. "But do you get lonely here?"
Oh, no. I have friends who live in the village, and I have my animals.
We went downstairs and had dinner. There was homemade bread, creamy butter, and goat cheese. For pudding, we had wild raspberries and cream. It was a delicious meal. It was getting dark, and I looked for the light switch. Uncle Fraser saw me and smiled.
Sorry, Megan. There is no electricity at the croft.
"No electricity? So you don't have a dishwasher?" I said, looking at the plates.
No, I'm the dishwasher.
Said my uncle, laughing. "And you probably don't have a computer," I said.
No, and I don't have a television. On Sky we create our own entertainment. I play the piano after dinner when friends come round, or I read by the light of candles and oil lamps. There are lots of board games in the corner, so we can play chess, draughts, Monopoly or Scrabble.
Piano? Board games? I couldn't believe it. No electricity. I wanted to go home, back to my technological world. So, where is the fridge, Uncle Fraser?
I don't need one. There is a cold cellar in this croft, and I grow most of my food. I milk the cows and goats early in the morning, so there is fresh milk every day, and I make my own cheese. I buy meat from the butchers when I want it. It's a perfect life, Megan.
Perfect, I said to myself as I climbed the stairs to bed. I went into my bedroom and put the candle on my desk. I looked out of my window. The moon was bright, and there were so many stars. And standing in the heather stood a silvery white horse.
Chapter 4.
I woke up, but there was something wrong. Then I knew what it was. It was the silence. There was no sound of cars or traffic. Nothing. I opened my window and listened, and then I heard a bird sing and a sheep call under my window. I dressed quickly and went downstairs. A big cat sat in front of the fire. It looked like a tiger with its red, white and grey stripes. My uncle was in the kitchen.
Good morning, Megan. Did you sleep well?
Yes, I did. I slept very well, I said. And I saw the silvery white horse again, Uncle Fraser, before I went to sleep. My uncle looked surprised, but he said nothing and put 2 bowls on the table. Why do you look surprised, Uncle Fraser, when I tell you about the white horse? Uncle Fraser sat down.
There is a legend, Megan, of a silvery white horse. Some people say it is a unicorn.
A unicorn? I said. Maybe the horse I saw was a unicorn. It was a long way away, and it was difficult to see. What does the legend say?
I don't know.
Uncle Fraser put a big bowl of porridge on the table.
A shepherd saw the unicorn, but it was 100 years ago now.
This was exciting news. Who can tell us about the unicorn? My uncle poured me a glass of fresh milk.
Old Mrs. McTaggarty knows the legend. She's the old woman who lives on the other side of the village. We can ask her. Now eat your breakfast, and no more questions.
The porridge was delicious, and I ate it with cream and sugar. The cat came and sat next to me.
This is Marmaduke. You didn't see him last night, because he likes to catch mice in the barn,
said my uncle.
Let's go outside, Megan. I have a surprise for you.
Uncle Fraser showed me his vegetable garden. There was spinach, carrots, potatoes and leeks, and there were rabbits trying to eat the lettuce. Uncle Fraser chased them away, and they jumped over the dry stone walls. Uncle Fraser had a field of sheep, 4 cows, 3 goats, and a lot of chickens. He showed me how to milk the cows, and it looked easy when he did it. The milk squirted into the bucket, but when I tried, nothing came out. "Oh, Uncle Fraser, I can't do it," I said.
The animals don't know you, Megan.
Said my uncle. He took my hands.
And you need warm hands.
Near the croft, there was a small barn and stables. I looked inside the first stable.
You met Darwin yesterday.
Said my uncle, patting the beige pony's neck.
He's my trap pony.
In the second stable, there was a cream-coloured pony with black spots.
This is Moon. My neighbour's son, Ben, often rides him.
I touched his nose. It was so soft. "Why do you call him Moon?"
Because when you look at the moon, it is cream-coloured, but there are little black marks. I think he's the colour of the moon.
Uncle Fraser moved to the third stable, where there was the prettiest pony. It was beige with a blonde mane and tail, and had big dark eyes.
This is your pony, Megan, and her name is Dolly.